Hello, and welcome to PLU's new student orientation session on Lutheran Higher Education. Although it may not sound like the most exciting presentation, actually understanding Lutheran Higher Education can help you understand the whole context of your education here at PLU and why things are done the way they are. So join me, please, as we look through a little bit of the history as well as the values of this type of education, and to encourage you on your way into the new year. Lutheran Higher Education at PLU is focused on rigorous education, an education in the liberal arts, and in a commitment to care for the world. Even at the beginning of this presentation, we'd like to note that PLU is on traditional tribal lands. It's located on the traditional lands of the Nisqually, Puyallup, Squaxin Island, and Steilacoom people, and we acknowledge and respect the traditional caretakers of this land and this wonderful environment that PLU calls home. A handy acronym to remember the basis of Lutheran Higher Education at PLU can be found in this kind of acronym of CALLS. PLU emphasizes critical inquiry and questioning, and this emphasis on questioning provides PLU a unique mission emphasis among colleges and universities. The value of asking good critical questions is a major emphasis throughout Lutheran Higher Ed. PLU also emphasizes access to learning for all, and this presentation will cover the history of that emphasis. It's a liberal education, not meaning like liberals versus conservatives, but actually the liberal arts, which form the basis of thinking about new ways to move into the future and new models that will help us move out of past kind of stagnating times. It emphasizes leadership, and it emphasizes service as one's call and purpose. Our educational history combines an expansive global memory that shapes our contemporary learning. Our learning here at PLU and Lutheran Higher Education is shaped by Greek philosophy, Roman legal study, rabbinic or Jewish argumentation, Christian monastic schools, Muslim advances in architecture, the arts and healthcare, medieval universities, Renaissance humanism, the Lutheran reform of education, emphasizing those elements of freedom, access, and commitment, and Enlightenment advances, the tradition of U.S. private liberal arts colleges and universities, and an openness to Chinese and Indian forms of learning. Even with this global emphasis, it's important to understand the history. Lutheran higher education actually finds its origins in Germany in the 1500s. Martin Luther and Philip Melanchthon were the founders of Lutheran higher education in the 1500s. They worked at the University of Wittenberg and made that the center of a new type of education. Martin Luther himself was a monk in the Catholic Church and a university professor. His own education and study led him to expose corruption and offer new ideas. He believed in the inherent integrity of all persons and believed they were loved in the eyes of God. He critiqued social and church systems that oppressed the poor and the vulnerable, and he affirmed the equality of all callings or jobs or vocations in the world. His phrase that I think sums up things well, at least in his religious context, was he says, where Christ is, there he always goes against the flow. And this is something that led Martin Luther to post the 95 Theses, challenging some of the church's unjust practices in his time. And also it helped in Lutheran history in Namibia in the 1980s as they challenged apartheid and the unjust racial structures and laws of South Africa that dominated their country. Their revolution for the freedom of Namibia and the liberation of Namibia was actually rooted in the Lutheran churches and their leaders that provided the kind of leadership that Nelson Mandela provided in South Africa's later struggles for liberation. The University of Wittenberg itself was founded in 1502. Some of the innovations that Luther helped found there were that he developed and unified a written German language by unifying 60-plus dialects from all across Germany, leading to some of the first developments of a national language. He used a lot of outreach to a majority illiterate Germany at the time, using new technologies in media and printing. He fostered the participation of all people in music, not just experts in singing. His theology emphasized equality, freedom, and service to others, and he focused on questioning authority, tradition, and the corruption that he saw around him in society and the church. He was highly committed to the democratization of knowledge, information, and church structures, leading to an inverse, really, hierarchy where the highest people in the church actually served the well-being of the most and of the majority. He also led to a lot of educational reform that I'll mention, and the development of public education, which was accessed and was able to be accessed by anybody for the first time in human history. The Lutheran reform of education at the University of Wittenberg held some important advances that we're still influenced by today. Luther emphasized that all people needed to be learn to read and write and express themselves and to be able to think freely. He encouraged and insisted on an education for men and women, boys and girls, really guaranteed, and this was for the first time in human history. You have the education of all persons, regardless of socioeconomic status, regardless of gender, regardless of kind of background and culture. He wanted all citizens in Germany to have access to education. This education was to be funded by the state through graded taxation. That's where we get that history even today. There was an incorporation of the humanities into university learning, history, languages, and literature, including poetry and ethics. He incorporated rigorous questioning of the status quo and received tradition, and he promoted academic freedom for the sake of advancing knowledge through research, experimentation, and performance. This promotion of academic freedom led to the modern tenure system that influences most universities and colleges throughout the United States, even today. He wanted people basically to be able to have free speech without fear of repercussion, and supported that throughout. He talked about that education is actually for leadership in society. It's for something. It's for a purpose. And this is to diminish human suffering and injustice. It's not just for self-advancement. It's important at the very beginning to stress that Luther at PLU is not approached as though he's a hero, but rather his work is seen as providing a model for revolution and reform based on good questions. For example, the 500th anniversary of the Reformation in 2017 fostered celebrations throughout the world of Luther, but they didn't emphasize an agreement with all of Luther's ideas, which we wouldn't really want to do in our contemporary times, but rather exhibits like this 95 People exhibit in Wittenberg, Germany, featured figures like Steve Jobs and his innovations in technology and communication, Friedrich Nietzsche and his excellent questions about religion and abuse of power in these kinds of, in religious contexts. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life was also emphasized because his father, Michael King, had gone to Germany, learned about Martin Luther's kind of approach and questioning of society and advocacy for social justice for the poor, and came home. So Michael King Sr. renamed himself Martin Luther King Sr. and renamed his son from Michael King Jr. to Martin Luther King Jr. So there's some direct correlations there, especially the emphasis on preaching and social justice, social good of all people. In the 95 People exhibit celebrating the Reformation included Kwok Pui Lan, who started the Occupy Religion movement, critiquing the colonialist structures in the academic study of religion. Also, in the left-hand side of the screen, down low, you'll find Reverend Megan Rohrer, who was the first transgender pastor of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, the Lutheran Church with which PLU is affiliated. These kinds of changes in hierarchies and ordination are central to the Lutheran tradition. And let's not forget J.S. Bach and all of the things that he brought to music and in the ways he shaped it. So Bach's reform of music followed in this Lutheran tradition as well. The spread of Lutheran higher education was so rapid in the 1500s that you can see here even in though a majority of Europe was Roman Catholic, by the end of the 1500s, different forms of Protestant Reformation had been advanced in different parts of Europe. You can see in particular the green and purple parts are other Protestant denominations, including the Reformed traditions, but the pink areas there on the map in Eastern Europe and in Europe and going into Scandinavia show this development of Lutheran higher education, then went from Germany up through the Scandinavian countries. Thus, it was various immigrant communities that came to the United States that developed different Lutheran colleges and universities across the United States. These are the locations on the map of the Lutheran colleges and universities today. 26 of these are specifically ELCA colleges and universities, including PLU. From the very beginning of Lutheran higher education, it was always based in the liberal arts. Because the reformers experienced the freeing power of education based in history, languages, philosophy, theology, etc., they stressed that Lutheran higher education is rooted in these liberal arts. Even from ancient times, the liberal arts in the Roman and Greek times were considered to give the basis of an essential education for free persons and for civic life generally. It provided a liberating or freeing education. It freed people from past models and frameworks and led them to be able to imagine and develop ones for the future. In the Greek and classical education, the several liberal arts are the three trivium or foundations, the lower division of grammar, logic, and rhetoric, where the upper division courses were arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. You may be wondering, what is this liberal arts education? The liberal arts today is generally a spectrum, and it's accepted as covering these following fields: the humanities, including art, literature, linguistics, philosophy, religion, ethics, modern foreign languages, music, theater, speech, and classical languages such as Latin and Greek. There's the social sciences that include history, psychology, law, sociology, politics, gender studies, anthropology, economics, geography, business informatics, and other forms of social sciences. The natural sciences include subjects like astronomy, biology, chemistry, physics, botany, archaeology, zoology, geology, and earth sciences. And then there's the formal sciences, including mathematics, logic, statistics. To the 7 classical liberal arts, Luther and his contemporaries added the heart of the Hebrew prophets who emphasized justice and human values. They added poetry, ethics, and the study of languages, which was at the root of their very reform. At PLU, the liberal arts aren't just distribution boxes to check as you go through the years, but rather the humanities, mathematics, social, and natural sciences are the very foundation on which we build our professional programs. They're the basis of a well-educated life of learning and leadership. As I mentioned before, PLU's is shaped by its immigrant past. Norwegian Lutheran immigrants came to the Pacific Northwest and brought their educational emphases and values with them. Some of these Scandinavian cultural sensibilities that they brought with them emphasized an egalitarian ethos, an earthiness or a down-to-earth care for the earth, a communal orientation, an emphasis on intellectual modesty and charity and learning in community, a strong work ethic, a high regard for education, and a commitment to social welfare and international peace. Just for fun, I thought I would show you one of the very first catalogs of PLU. This comes from 1895, and it shows, for example, that all of the Rooms at PLU are going to be heated by steam and lighted by electricity. They also talk about the terms of admission, the tuition as $1 a week, as well as the room and board for $1 a week have changed quite a bit in the last couple of years. But actually over the last century plus. The courses of study, though, are quite interesting to look at because many of them remain hallmarks of a Lutheran education today. It says normal school. Well, normal school, it isn't trying to teach you how to be normal, but actually normal school was what you called education back then. Literacy, business, a strong business school, which we still hold, scientific studies, classical studies, religious studies, music, and shorthand, which to my awareness is not taught anymore, but the rest of them show some emphases that still you're going to find at PLU as strong hallmarks of Lutheran Higher Ed. Our faculty from across the university, however, look quite different and are quite different in their academic emphases than the very first immigrants. We have colleagues all across the disciplines who come from multiple places across the world and are leaders in their areas of study and passionate teachers. That's why they're here. It's important now to cover the educational mission of PLU, its values and commitments that shape the courses throughout all the disciplines in the university. We're united by our support of PLU's mission, that we are educating for lives of thoughtful inquiry, service, leadership, and care for others, their communities, and the earth. You will hear this repeated multiple times across your time at PLU. It's also important to talk about what it means that PLU is a university of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. This can sound pretty scary or kind of unfamiliar in the Pacific Northwest. What I want to assure you is what it means is that it has commitments. It's a value-laden education with commitments to diversity, justice, and sustainability, and service to the neighbor and earth. It has an educational value of service and community orientation. It's accompanied by the ELCA, that's one of the more progressive church bodies in our country. It affirms a fearless pursuit of education and questioning, and it values the academic study of religion as necessary for a humane, peaceful world, and reflecting on one's own deepest values and commitments, whether they come from a secular or a religious basis. In Martin Luther's own kind of reflections on the purpose of education, he wrote this: "For you are powerful, not that you may make the weak weaker by oppression, but that you may make them powerful by raising them up and defending them. You are wise, not in order to laugh at the foolish and thereby make them more foolish, but that you may undertake to teach them as you yourself would wish to be taught." What I hope you're hearing is that this university is an educational community committed to the following: to teaching, scholarship, and service, to global education, faculty-student research, purposeful learning, and vocation or calling in one's life to serve one's community and the earth, and diversity, justice, and sustainability. You'll see these emphases throughout your time here at PLU and even within individual classes. It's equally important to understand what this university is not. It is not a smaller version of a research university or a private school for elites in the Pacific Northwest. It is not a church school for the intellectually timid. Most importantly, it does not equate religious affiliation, whether you're a member of Native American religious traditions, Buddhist, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, secular perspectives. None of these perspectives are equated, religious perspectives, are equated with a lack of the best contemporary rigorous scholarship or an anti-intellectual, anti-science stance, much different from our contemporary culture and some of the kind of biased view of religion that it brings with it. Rather, we welcome you to bring your whole self and your deepest convictions to your education. In a nutshell, the educational mission and vocation of PLU is a committed education. It has a commitment to rigorous education through critical inquiry and questioning. It is also committed to fostering student reflection about the meaning and purpose of their education in service to the world. The core elements of Lutheran higher education at PLU emphasize these 7 main ideas: critical questioning of current knowledge and values, freedom for expression and protection of learning, a liberating foundation in the liberal arts, learning and research within a community, the intrinsic value of the whole creation, and discerning one's vocation or calling into the world, and service to the advancement of life, health, and wholeness. Indeed, the Lutheran reformers taught that education is for something, not only the advancement of knowledge, but also a commitment to the alleviation of suffering. Thus, a Lutheran education is inextricably linked to promoting life, health, and wholeness for others other than human creatures and the earth itself. Our commitment to the promotion of peace and a just and sustainable society flows from such a commitment to wholeness. So, welcome to PLU. We are passionate and excited about your educational journey and look forward to sharing our community and the adventure of Lutheran higher education with you. I'm going to close here with a short video by faculty and staff from PLU describing how they see Lutheran higher education, and hopefully you'll hear here echoes of what you've already heard in this presentation. Again, welcome to PLU. We can do it. Understanding Lutheran higher ed is probably going to help you understand the social heart of the institution. The fact that it's about service, it's not individual gain focused, but it's how do we serve the community, both at PLU and in the broader community and in the world.
It's just not about us getting our sweet little degrees and going off, doing whatever we darn well please. It's about making a significant difference in the world through our work.
It's about creativity. It's about learning how one is an other, and then learning about the other so that you better understand who you are in this world and what you have to bring.
In a world that can't think about religion and spirituality without polarizations and kind of black and whites and different kinds of sides, Lutheran higher ed asks students to bring their whole self, including their spiritual self, their social and family situations, their entire being to their education. And we're not afraid of any of it.
You bring your whole self to the table, and you're at the table with people who have a lot of different perspectives, and that's valued and okay. So we're rooted in the Lutheran tradition, and because of that, that's why we're open to a variety of other traditions and perspectives.
I'm starting to shout now because I'm getting excited. Lutheran education began with questioning what everybody took to be normal in the status quo.
And Martin Luther in the 1500s, taking his education of history, of religion, and critical questioning, brought him to look at things in a different light, in a new way, to challenge the way that things were.
Really, the question is the training. If you can ask and answer good questions, that's the core of an education. In institutions, there are some institutions that really don't actually put asking questions in front.
I think it's also about humility. The idea that when we come to a conversation that we don't have everything we need, and so we have to ask good questions, listen to the wisdom of others, to listen to the wisdom of our traditions. So for me, there's a humility to asking questions.
I always use the quote from Martin Luther, the more perspectives you know, the closer you are to the truth. So the fact that you want a diverse array of perspectives and upbringings and opinions that challenge one another, and that brings you closer to the truth and makes you more affirmed in what you believe in, or you're going to learn other perspectives to actually change your mind.
If Lutheran higher ed has a commitment to multiple frameworks and multiple perspectives, you don't look at that flat in a classroom, and then in turn look out into the world and say, gosh, it's there, it's there, it's there, it's there, and then do nothing. Once we start understanding better what Lutheran Higher Ed is, that is then what we offer. And that crosses ethnic and racial lines and sexual orientation and just the diversity of silos and of compartmentalization.
Lutheran higher education is the foundation for all the other values and that we live. So, for example, diversity, justice, and sustainability, or vocation. That those values didn't come out of nowhere, but they're really rooted and steeped in Lutheran higher education. And that Lutheran higher education is really the wisdom and the nourishment that supports those values and those ways of living together.
So we come into education and Lutheran higher ed thinking, oh, this is the worldview because that's the one we've been raised with. But then by exposure to these different worldviews, learning history, imagining new models, we actually are given more possibilities for going forward than we had in the past. See you and meet you in person on campus soon.